If people know you're going to be on for ages, there's no urgency. This Week in E-commerce, episode 139, and I cannot believe we are in June, and today I got my very first end of financial year sale text message. What about you, Alex?
It's wild, like just it being the start of June, I'm just thinking, where is the year gone? And it's freezing as well. We're well into winter.
It is. You are in Melbourne at the moment. I can imagine Melbourne is obviously cold.
Yes, very cold, very wet, very windy. So all of the things.
Yep. I've got UGG boots on. I'm in fleece. It's very cold here as well in South Australia. And last week in Sydney, it was also cold. So we are well into winter and well into end of financial year sale. But it is alarming though that people have started sales, and this one is actively promoting they are going to be on till the end of the month, which is a very long time to be on sale.
Yeah, that's a very, very long time. And also that psychology of saying how long you'll be on sale for the month. I don't know where.
I'm not sure about that one either, because I've actively said this. If people know you're going to be on for ages, there's no urgency. Whereas you need to treat it with urgency, get people to come and buy right now, and there's a lot of people who are going to be doing like their flash sale offers. So having like one consistent sale, but every 48 hours doing like a new offer for 24 hours, things like that to try to spark urgency. But at the same time, it's like, we're just reaching right into the bag of lots of different tactics.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, we're going to dive straight into it. And our first quickie for the day is a report from Inside Retailer from Mandala Partners, which claims that online shopping can save consumers, households, I should say, $1,400 a year. Pretty big number. What do you make of this one?
It doesn't surprise me because of that discount nature when it comes to online, being able to research, make sure that you're getting the best price. Whereas when you're in a store and you need something, you buy it straight away. You don't have that kind of comparison. So from that lens, it makes sense.
Yeah, it made the claim, though, that part of this was due to a decrease in fuel usage by not having to drive to the shops and just having things delivered for you. And it kind of guesstimated that you'll be making 4 shopping trips a week. But having said that, though, that last mile delivery also has a cost to it as well when you're buying lots of single items or one or twos from lots of different retailers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also the 12% of online retail as well, of total retail is online. Also kind of caught me by surprise in the fact that it hasn't really grown much in the last couple of years.
Well, it hasn't, because with COVID, we had those people that had never shopped online finally, kind of entering the market. But then from there hasn't been that next step. How do we get more?
I know we've been saying for a while that 20% is where we were heading, but it just feels like we've stalled a little bit on that. I think part of that is also due to the various economic conditions we've had over the last few years, a lot of uncertainty in the market, cost of living pressures, and various things. So it's no real surprise it hasn't grown, but the fact that it hasn't grown at all, really, maybe like 1% in the last 3 years, it goes to show that we still need to think omnichannel, that there is still such a huge role to play for bricks and mortar, that you can't just rely solely on online to continue growing your business.
Yeah, that good old fashioned traditional trade.
All right, and our second story is one which you just shared this morning, which is Stateside Sports has entered voluntary administration, I should say, not admission. And also yesterday I found that OzGoods Depot have also entered liquidation. So a couple of stories here with Stateside Sports, who are a retailer of US sports merchandise, so like licensed gear from the NBA, NFL, MLB, go Spurs go, have appointed administrators. And part of this is due to their really significant operational costs. Where they had 31 stores around the country, and quite a significant warehouse as well, which have, and also the fact that they also have to pay a licensing fee as well for all their products. Yeah, it puts a lot of pressure on the business.
Yeah, 100%. I was in one of their stores in Sydney, start of the year. Massive, amazing range, but to have 31 of those, to deal with the nature of, to your point, having those low profit margins, it's a lot to work through.
Yeah, and then also OzGoods Depot as well. So a discount online retailer, they've called in liquidators and they owe $2.5 million. But the thing which caught my eye, they owe it to primarily Meta, Microsoft Advertising, and Shopify Capital. And that's just a recipe for disaster when your three biggest creditors are revenue-based financing and advertising.
Yeah, okay. That's I didn't read that story. It's not great.
Yeah, so it always goes to show that, you got to really think about what you're spending money on. If you're having to spend money quite heavily on advertising and not able to recoup the benefits from that, you got to really ask about the business model. And I think in their case, they've never really had much room to grow as a retailer. I think that whole model, as we talked about before, particularly as a marketplace, essentially, it's hard to compete against the Temus and the Amazons of the world. Whereas on the stateside side, they're getting squeezed by their margins.
Yeah, exactly.
And one good news story is Kogan have reported that their sales and profits are soaring, in their words. So in the last ASX update, which came out on 26th of May, gross sales were up 13% to $876 million, and revenue was up gross sales are up 13%. Gross profit was up 11%, including an 8.6% increase to their adjusted EBITDA, which is right on with the upper limits of their ASX guidance. So pretty good results from Kogan.
Yeah, for sure. A really solid start.
Yeah, look, I think for them as well, they're obviously a marketplace now, very capital light, very high margins on their own products as well. So it's kind of the example of that marketplace model working, where you do have that flywheel effect of customers just coming in, particularly since they kind of own that consumer electronic space as well. But the other one surprising was that they purchased Mighty Ape in New Zealand back in 2020, which was always making a loss, and it is still making a loss, but it's actually trimmed that loss quite significantly over the last 12 months, which is really positive to see. So again, showing that that investment in building that platform, building that marketplace is starting to pay off for them, in the same way that Iconic, after over a decade of losses, is finally profitable.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well with Mighty Ape, we know that the New Zealand market is doing it even tougher. So for them to have that growth of loss or loss of growth or however, it's still a positive direction, right?
Yeah. Look, I love to see it. Marketplaces are very hard to get right. And honestly, if people ask me, hey, I'm thinking about starting a marketplace, I usually say don't.
Yeah.
Because you need to be able to wear those losses for a while. Mm-hmm. So a bootstrap marketplace is almost never ever going to work, because you do not have the runway for that. But if you do have the investment and you're willing to put in the time, the effort, and believe you can carve out a niche separate from the Amazons, the Temus, the Iconics of the world, by all means, go for it. But it's very hard to find that niche. And don't forget, Kogan's been around for as long as e-commerce has been around as well.
Well, and that's the thing, is Kogan, Amazon, they've all, had that stake of playing for a while.
And our final quickie for the day is one which we've been talking about for a little while, which the ACCC has taken federal court action against Amazon for the sale of 41 unicorn backpacks, because the over button battery warning failures failed on the kids' backpacks. So it's not even the significance of it. It goes to what we were talking about last week, with how the ACCC has received this additional funding in order to actually prosecute the marketplaces themselves for selling unsafe products.
Look, I imagine this is a hot one for the ACCC when you think about businesses that aren't based in Australia, so Amazon, selling into Australia and really understanding the nuance of our compliance, particularly with kids' product, right? And I've heard of similar stories with Temu as well. So whilst you're selling in Australia, you need to be up to standard for our Australia kids as well.
Yeah, and this is going to be a real litmus test for it as well, because the whole argument, which Amazon, I'm sure, are going to go with, is that they're the platform. They're the platform. They don't actually own any of the liability for supplying the products on there. But this is the whole point of what this change in the laws are, to actually put that onus back on the marketplace. So if Amazon's successful, you can expect that this will just lead to a whole flood of very poor quality goods. But if they lose this as well, the implications are fairly significant. And there's a huge upside actually for Australian retailers who are properly sourcing their products from legitimate, high quality factories, in China and other countries. Okay, our first deep dive, we are going to be talking about the funnel and how that is collapsing. So a lot of people have been reaching out to me saying that their website traffic has gone down over the last 6 to 12 months. And it's no surprise where this is going. This is all going to AI. So in particular, there's data now which shows that when Google shows an AI overview, only 1% of people actually click on the link in there as well, which is significantly down from what would normally happen in your search engine results page, where that would be up to like 15, 20%. So this means that there's now a fairly significant chunk of traffic who are completely bypassing your website. They're going to Google, they're searching for it there, or even going to ChatGPT or Claude, and they're not actually going to your site. So, Alex, this is a pretty significant change, which we've been foreshadowing for a little while. But now the data is here that AI legitimately stops traffic to your website. So it's almost no point setting up that additional Google GA4 filter to look at your AI traffic, since most of it's never actually going to come to your site at all.
Well, I think like yes and no, and it's just that further nuance of attribution, right? Like we were already struggling with attribution, so now this change has mixed everything up again. From what I've been reading and looking into, it's about, yes, people discovering your brand on ChatGPT for the first time, and then they're doing a Google search, they're going straight to your URL or things like that. So you're not going to have that more clear linear path, which we didn't really have to begin with, but it's getting curvier.
Yeah, well, I think it's the whole thing about the whole funnel is collapsing from that whole research, discovery, and then intent. It's all kind of happening all in the same spot right now. And yes, while still some of the commerce still needs to happen on your site, eventually that's going to move into that agentic storefront, which we talked about last week. So what do you think retailers need to be doing now to really start thinking about responding to this? Like, what's the most important thing that they should be focusing on?
Yeah, look, that's so many things. Is obviously a tough one. I think thinking about who's converting at the moment, well, how's that average order value? How can you get more out of those shoppers and that traffic that is coming to the site, right? And then the other side is taking a look at that advertising approach, how visible you are on these large language models, and how you're starting to get prepared for agentic.
Yeah, and we talked before previously about being more intent-based with your search. So for instance, instead of saying like best blue light glasses, you actually start talking about the specific use case and the problem which someone's likely to solve. So you appear earlier in their journey, I should say. So from a traffic perspective, that's always been one of the metrics as someone as old as I am, who always looks at sessions, conversion rate, AOV are kind of the three things which you need to move the needle on. How do you move the needle on it if traffic is no longer as important as it once was?
And then thinking about your socials, if you've got stores, that true kind of omni-channel, and where are those, yeah, different lanes that you can start to flex on.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to be a bit of a change in terms of how we need to start thinking about this, and it's happening much faster than I think anyone really expected as well. At least I didn't anyway. I thought that storefronts would be around for a lot longer. You'd still need to drive traffic there, but this latest research does suggest that it is happening pretty quick, and we need to start thinking about how you're adapting to that. But then also just to change the lens in terms of what KPIs you're looking at for your store as well. That while traffic is still critical, it's not the only one as well. And how do we actually start thinking about how are we surfacing on those? And at some stage, I'd love to be able to see some metrics like Hrefs or something like that to see how often you get surfaced in an LLM. But I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
Yeah, and again to that like degree of reliability as well, right? Yeah, so a lot to change, but I think also the fundamentals are still always going to be there.
Yeah, well, I think it's more important about brand and marketing, right? So really thinking about how do you actually get found before someone actually comes to your website? How are you making sure that you are in that consideration set and awareness before someone is ready to purchase, which means really optimizing for the 95% of the 95.5 rule, when people are out of market.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And our next deep dive is Article, the owner of Redbubble, have announced that they are seeing less loss than previous, I should say. So in the last quarter, their revenue was down just 1.1% compared to the previous year, which is a big improvement on the 9.3% decline, which they had the previous quarter on FY25. So along with the story as well, they did see an increase in gross profit to 10 point, which showing that there is still a lot of demand for personalized, customized products, which I think, isn't a trend which is going away and probably seems to be accelerating a little bit more, Alex.
Yeah, 100%. And even it's those smaller purchases. I don't know, let's say a mirror for your handbag, that having that engraved, having that personalized, for example, makes that product so much more valuable to the shopper, but the price point doesn't reflect that. So I think that's the beauty of the personalization.
And look, and I think it's something which more and more, as we enter an era where we want to be more personalized, and we're discovering our tribes more, we want to wear our fandoms on our sleeves, so to speak. Is that there is a shift towards that. I know myself personally, I've bought some T-shirts recently, like licensed T-shirts for a lot of different bands for my kids, because through different artists, through different, I can't remember what the platform was, because because they wanted to support them. They didn't want like a generic Kmart top or something like that. They wanted to wear a band, which they love, which is fantastic, right? But I think the challenge with this business model is that when you think about the platform's point of view, like in Redbubble's case, there's so much margin which gets eroded at different stages of that. They have to pay the artist, they have to pay the print, they have to pay the fulfillment, and then they have to pay for advertising on top of that for the discovery as well. So it's quite a lot in that stack, and I think it's a hard business to make work.
100%. And the logistics of it are very complicated.
But there is a big opportunity, though, for different brands who actually own more of the supply chain to think about how they can personalize it. I know with one of the brands I work with, they were well known for monogramming and personalization of all the products you bought from there. They made a cost decision to stop doing that. And then immediately sales of those SKUs where they stopped doing it on plummeted. So they reintroduced it, and straight away they increased immediately because people wanted that level, even though the product is generally superior to the competitors. But just by removing that bit meant that there was that one extra thing which people could add to it to say, hey, this is mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of any personalized products which you've bought before?
Oh gosh. None come to mind, but I do believe that, and we've spoken about it so many times now with like the charm effect of adding pieces is a way of personalizing that product, that look for you, and that individuality is really important.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of also being able to do this print on demand model as well is that you can be fairly limited with the number of SKUs which you do. So if you can do licensing at print on demand, it kind of reduces your potential cost and outlay. I know with a few different brands who have been focusing a lot on licensing, they see an immediate spike from the license from all the fans to come in. But once those fans are gone, it's hard to sell that because we're becoming more and more tribalistic in the things which we love. So there's not really as much of a flow-on effect unless you're like a huge property, like let's say a Pokemon, or a Super Mario, for instance, where that does reach a fairly wide market.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And a final deep dive is LVLY, so Lively, which is a florist, has done the opposite of what a lot of other brands have done. And they have decided to actually not automate all the customer service. So by doing so, they've increased their NPS from 58 to 76 in 1 year, all by taking away automated customer service and actually bringing it back in to real-time delivery updates, live chat, a customer care team who are empowered to solve issues on the spot without having to go through, macros or approval chains or escalations. Just go out there and fix a problem and make the customer extremely happy. In many ways, this reminds me of Tony Hsieh's book. I can't remember what it's called. I think it was Buying Happiness, I think it was, where it was all about, if you make people really happy and make them feel really good, they're going to love your brand even more, which makes sense, right?
It does. I like this story from that perspective of going against the grain. Like, we're having so many conversations around AI, and they've said, actually, no, this is what we're going to keep as human. And that is noticeable for consumers, probably out of all of the AI pieces. Noticing when you click on a chat, whether they've got the prompts and you've got a chat bot, or it's Sally who's sitting at the desk saying, hey, I'm here, shoppers notice that.
Yeah, I've got one of the brands who I work with. They actually offer a phone concierge as well because they sell fairly high value products. And anytime someone calls, it's almost like 100% strike rate on that sale because you can actually talk them through their problems as well, rather than just automating it away. Whereas all their competitors, you have to go to a form, you have to go to a live chat, you have to go through all these prompts, and it's always a fairly automated answer as well, which they're getting. Whereas in their category, they can really talk through it, and build that emotional connection. So even though someone else may be selling a near identical product, they feel that reciprocity. They feel that sense of obligation. If I'm going to buy it, well, I'm going to buy it from you. So do you think that this may be the start of a trend? Do you think that works at everyone, that every brand could move towards this? Or is this something where it really only works for these sort of ones where they're like gifting or high value products, luxury products, where that emotion is actually a really important thing and being able to talk through someone about the gift?
Yeah, it's a good question. This exact conversation came up at Retail Fest, and I was talking with a brand that sells premium wallpaper, Milton & King client. They're amazing. I feel like I've already spoken about this on the podcast, actually. Anyway, they also said they will never move their chat to bots. Like, they're always going to have that layer of human. So to your point, like, that's a premium brand. So it is that doesn't make sense for your business, but I think it's a really great way to stand out.
Yeah, so definitely have a think about your category and think about what can be automated, but then also more importantly, what do you actually need to keep with a human there to make sure that you don't lose that bond with your customers? Because ultimately, that's what people buy for. They buy for that emotional connection, they buy for that relationship. And if you can do that better than your competitors, a pretty good chance you're going to win.
Exactly. And the beauty of that with LVLY, I always thought it was lovely in my mind, lively.
I want to call it lively, lovely. I'm not sure, so I just call it LVLY.
LVLY, but because you're purchasing this product for the most part for somebody else, so it's a really great way of the purchaser getting value, you know, having all those feelings, as well as then the receiver of the gift, because there's really two consumers in that equation.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I buy from the same florist over and over again because I know the florist, and I can actually talk to her and tell her what I want, who it's for, and then they will custom design a bouquet for me on those rare occasions I do buy flowers. And it's that connection, which means that it doesn't feel like I'm buying a commodity. I'm buying something which has been personalized for me because it has.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, that's all we have time for this week. But before we go, Alex, you are going to be at the Evocative Media event this week, tomorrow actually. And also a big shout out to Online Retailer, which is going to be happening on the 23rd and 24th of July. So if you haven't got your tickets yet, we do have 50 all access passes ready to go, but then also 50 tickets just for the show floor if you don't have time to stay for the whole event either. We will be putting those in the show notes, or just send us a DM and then we will send you the link if you want to get access to those to that code. And we will hopefully see you there.
Yeah. And I'd add to that as well, Mel, thinking about who from your team would find value in Online Retailer. Everybody would. So who else can you bring from the team? Who else is going to get that value?
100%. That's how we all grow. Okay, that's all we got time for. Keep innovating, keep growing, and keep selling. And we'll see you back here next week.
See you soon.